We're good online, we're good to go. Mics are ready to go. All right, we're back. Let's talk about migrating your data to ESMS. Right off the bat, show of hands, when would you like to do the migration to ESMS? Do you want to be an early adapter, like as soon as it's ready, let's go? For those online, we've got about 10, 12-ish, okay. Who wants to wait about a year? Yeah, about a little bit less than that, maybe 5 or 10 on that. And who's going to go kicking and screaming and being one of the last ones? Okay, yeah, handful of people. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, there was more people that were ready to go once it's released. That's interesting. Okay, so welcome to the experimental portion of our agenda, because we're going to do a workshop. And we really don't have a whole lot of content, because we're going to get that content from our panel and you guys. So we're going to see what we can come up with. We're going to throw some ideas up on the screen and see what we need to do. What do we need to prepare for? And what do we need to test once we move things over? All right, joining me up on stage, we have Julie Krebs from NNSA. We have John Doolin from DECA. That's the commissary folks. John, what is your, he was the builder lead.
Chief of Design and Construction.
Chief of Design and Construction, thank you. We have Scott Lemkel from Defense Health Agency. He's the builder lead for that. And Bill Hawkins from the Air Force. And if you thought my introduction for Kurt was bad, what do you hear my introduction for myself? But I won't, because I got to get out of the MC mode and into the moderator mode. So what I want to have at least start off with is have our panel just do a couple of minutes of the things that they've discussed about going to ESMS, and what have you even thought about it? What plans have you made? Where do you want to go with this? And I've got a couple follow-ups too. All right, Julie.
Okay, let's see. So I'm going to say first off, we're not kicking and screaming per se, but hanging back is probably good. Like I said earlier, we're rolling in on getting Builder fully implemented for all of our real assets by the end of this fiscal year. And there's really only, the Builder 368 update is really the last Builder update we kind of need to kind of reach sustainment mode, because one of those features on there was at our request is wanting to track partial units of measure at the asset level, because we do track, all of our roads and utilities and things in there. So we do need the ability to track, a half a mile, so it doesn't round and cost a whole mile, so that we're over, our costs are out of whack. So really, once we kind of get that into our system, I think we're kind of sitting pretty for a while. We don't really have an immediate need to go to the ESMS. And so I think this is going to sound really selfish, but we'd like to have a lot of you guys be the guinea pigs and figure out a lot of the problems. And then once it's like really good and stable, then we'll move over. So I think that's sort of our strategy. So we're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. Part of our challenge too is we host our own instance of Builder, and we're non-DoD. So the logistics around being able to host non-DoD clients and how do you get it is not really in the pipeline right now for Searle. They're kind of focusing on how do we get DoD in and make their security and all of that work. So there's also some technical challenges that will kind of keep us in the in the wings, kind of waiting for that to take off. One thing we would really like to do is, many years ago when we started with Builder in 2014, we wanted to host our own instance because of a lot of the security issues. We wanted it behind our firewalls and all of that. I think we've since kind of found that we could have Searle host it, and honestly, a lot of the technical challenges we have arise because we host our own instance. It's like, Searle develops this great package, we work with Jigon and others to test it and things, but we really don't find unique issues until we put it on our own servers, and then there's all this like funkiness that we have to figure out. So we have a little bit of protection. We have 3 Builder instances. We have a production environment where we host our live data for our programs, and then we have a training environment, which we actually use less for training now of new users. It's actually more like testing data changes of, hey, if I added a whole bunch of new catalog items, or I changed a model, or any kind of testing, we can test those data swings, and if it moves in the direction we like, then we'll upgrade it to our production environment. Great, but then we don't have to do all of our data testing in our live environment. And then we have an integration environment which is totally separate and apart from our production and training environments so that we can test software updates and hopefully not break things with every little update. So, but even with that, we have our own unique challenges. So there's real inherent advantage of having Searle host our instance, because then the developers are actually testing in the environment it's going to be hosted in, right? So that it takes a lot of those technical problems that we have just given the way we host. So I think ideally that's like where we would like to go, but there's a lot of, again, challenges with figuring out the technicalities of it. Will the DoD let them host our instance? Do they have the capacity to do that? And not only do we have Builder, but we leverage a lot of Digon products, their hub product. We host in our own environments. That helps us in a lot of ways. We host a cost engine that Gordian provides us so that we do have sort of that bottom up, we call it RPV, but PRV cost in there. So it's like, it's not just building to think about we're hosting all these suite of products together, and how does that interplay? And so that's kind of where we'd like to go. I don't know where that's going to go. Right now, we're also on physical servers. We haven't gone to the cloud, but when we do, whether we go with Searle or hosting ourselves, we're going to be in the Azure Government Cloud also. So I don't know. We're thinking about what that's all going to take. I'm sure going to cover a lot of the different things, but that's where we are. We're not immediately going to jump on. I'm kind of anticipating within the next, hopefully within the next 5 years, we're kind of starting a transition, but there's a kind of a question mark of timing right now.
At DECA, we're another small agency. We are DoD, so I do go through Searle, but even then, the folks that we work with, one of the things I anticipate is going back in my existing data and cleaning it up before I go to transition. Because all the little nuts and bolts and odd things that throw me in now, I'm not sure how it transitions over when we go into another system. As always, the cleaner your system is before you put the data back. I've got lots of stuff, and some of it's odd. The gentleman from the Agricultural Research Center talks about refrigeration. My majority of my stuff problems are refrigeration. So I have lots of refrigerators and freezers and all that. So all that data needs to be cleaned up. I need to make my leadership aware probably a little bit better. Most of them, all they want to know is, what's the BCI? Well, what's the FSA? That's all they care about, how much it's going to cost me. I need to have a little bit better communication with them that this system is going to happen and it's going to cost money. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to give it to me for free. So it's going to cost money up front, not only to do the data, but to get ready for it. Having people trained. I have trouble keeping people trained now. So when you go to a new system, I got a feeling there's going to be some transitional training, not only with my old data, but is somebody going to go into the new system and try to do it the old way? So there's some training to be had as well. My transition period, we're a small agency. If I had the dollars in support, I'd start it sooner than later, just because I am a smaller agency. The Air Force and the Army have multiple facilities. Mine might be a good test bed, but at the same time, it comes with some risk. But like I said, I understand if I were above, I would say, John, you're a good person because you've got a limited number of facilities. You have a couple, 3 or 4 years of redundancy of inspections and assessments. You might be a good company to try to start with. But that's what I'm kind of looking at, how I need to head forward on this stuff.
John, when you say clean up your data, do you mean it more of a data quality, or getting things that are out of scope that are in there and you get those removed?
Honestly, I think when most of us started, there are certain assumptions or certain conditions that are probably still in there that people haven't really looked at that much since we started. So even on the starting point, did we make the right, are they critical? Are they high priority, low priority? All these kind of things that we went through initially when we started setting up our programs, are those still the correct assumptions? Now that's, but that changes a lot of stuff. But also the cleaning up the data. Our data, as you know, goes through a lot of QA/QC when we put it in. That being said, that doesn't mean it's all, we still run into issues occasionally. Something, either something's in or it's not in our cost books or it's not part of whatever. Like I said, all the assessment folks are doing a great job, but every once in a while the pencil slips. So that kind of data. I mean, the initial assumption as well as, do I have the best data that I have to transfer it? May not have to do anything with it, but if you don't look, you don't know.
Okay, thanks. Scott?
Can you remind me of what the question was?
What are you doing?
What am
What are you doing?
I'm going to retire in 2 years. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's a joke. I'm not going to retire. I'm going to mirror some of the comments my peers have made here. But we really did begin preparing for ESMS 3 years ago, and there's two things we did. Number one, the Defense Health Agency stood up in March of 2020, and everybody knows what happened in April of 2020, right? So what that did is that gave us an opportunity as we were coming together to write what we call the BRG, the Builder Resource Guide, the DHA Builder Resource Guide, because the services had all gone their own directions with Builder. And so that was our opportunity to create a document to bring us into conformity to answer every question that we just said that's been brought up. But then what we did is we spent about $12.5 million on top of a $5 million contract to go back, and we basically reassessed every single building in the builder inventory, and we just finished that up last September. So I would just say, and I agree with my peers, the first thing you've got to make sure you do is make sure your data's right. And I'll explain why that's very important in a minute. But since this is Love on Your Vendor Day, if you would please, Umberto, stand up. And Umberto was with Golden Wolf. Golden Wolf has been our faithful partner from the days in MedCom, 18, 19, 20. They won the contract in 2020 with GSA, wrote the BRG, and then went out and implemented it. And then they had to get a little bit of help, because when we found out how much work it would take to fix our data, we realized the sustainment contract wouldn't be able to take care of it. So we think we're starting from a very good starting point of very clean data, and that's going to be very important. I'll tell you why in a minute. One of the other reasons that our data is so clean is because we finally got a QA guy on board, and Randy, if you would stand up, please. Randy is the DHA Builder QA program manager, and the greatest compliment that Golden Wolf has ever given Randy is when they said, Randy was going to Europe a couple weeks ago for vacation, and they said, could you stay over there a couple more weeks? Because we like it when you're not QA in our data, right? And so if I'm about to say something, and some of you can call me out, but that's okay. I'll show you the stats. When you look at sections in our database compared to the BRG, which is the standard, our vendor is achieving between 95 and 97%. And so you say, well, at what level are you doing it? At the site level. So our guys go to a site, they update all the builder data, they update all the work plans, they come back, they put the data into the builder database. That's what Randy QAs. They do fail, I mean, nobody's perfect, but I think they gave us 25 sites last month, 35? 42, right? And 3 failed. 3 failed. They did not meet the 90, which is our threshold. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we've got a well-trained workforce that understands what we want and is giving us what we want, right? So we just released, and this shouldn't be any news to most of you. I've talked to most of the big vendors in here, but we just released what we're calling the ESMS transition and sustainment contract. And we wrote that contract with an eye to transitioning to ESMS. So if you say early adopter, we adopted 3 years ago. We were thinking about it 3 years ago. Now we have the contract where we can step into actively transitioning our data. Just want to bring up 2 more points and then I'll shut up. One is, we've gone to our command and we've said the minute that Matt said it Tuesday, tells us that he's transitioning to ESMS, which if you didn't hear him Tuesday, he said, what's going to be available later this week? He's going to send it to us? The migration tool. So what's in case you forgot, Matt, I've just reminded you of your promise. So what is the very first thing you need to do to get your data into ESMS? You got to migrate it. So our team is going to be standing by as soon as he sends that to us to begin looking at the migration tool. We want to be at the front of the curve. We don't want to wait, right? That's number one. So now,
Scott, can I interrupt? What's the motivation to be ahead of the curve on that?
we're just a bunch of overachievers. No. And this is going to sound arrogant. There's no way for me to go around it, but for those of you that have been here for years, we've always been the front edge of Builder. We've always used Builder in new and different ways that no one else is using Builder, and we just like being in that position. We would rather go to Mr. McAndrew, Undersecretary of Defense, and say, this is how DHA uses Builder. Hey, look what it does, sir. He's like, dang, I didn't know Builder do that, right? So we like being in that position. I would far rather be that than have him issue a DODI that tells me how to maintain my data, right? Now, he's going to do that anyway, and we will work our way through that, but my point is we want to be out in front. We don't want to be behind. So what does my command think of that, though? We've earned enough credibility with our command to go, hey, Matt's going to give us this tool. From the minute he gives us that tool, our unstated expectation is that for the next 18 months, we're in transition. So boss, I'm going to give you data. It might not be perfectly fresh, maybe a little bit old. But what do we all know about Builder? Builder has algorithms. Do the algorithms stop just because we don't update the data? No, right? So anyway, I'll quit because I think I'm probably going, I don't know how much time I had. But so the bottom line is our command is on board. They know there's going to be an 18-month window. We're going to work with Matt. As soon as he'll give us anything, we're trying to get the ESMS installer packages on him to put on our dev server, and he just won't part with them yet. But when he does that, we're going to start doing a bunch of stuff in the background too to begin to move in. And I've got some other comments, but I'll quit for now. So,
Scott, when you eventually pull that trigger to do the migration, do you plan on just doing it all? Let's move everything, or you're going to do like a pilot with one site? Because that's one of the things we have on the list that's coming up. It's like one building.
One building. So what we're going to, okay, so sorry, you've enticed me. So, so the point is that we have our data set up. We know how the migration tool looks like, what it looks like. Oh, one more thing I forgot. We asked Matt a year ago, are the fundamental assumptions and the fundamental philosophical assumptions of Builder going to change? And he said no. And we said, as long as those things don't change, then we'll be good, right? So what does that mean? Okay, I get the tool, I bring my first building in. What I see in ESMS, as far as sections and all the details, RPUID, SUID, installation, all of that has to transition. If all that transitions, now I'll go to the next step. What's the next step? If I go into Builder and I create my policies and standards for my work plan, and I hit that button, then the button that I have that I've printed and it's in my archive should exactly match for the Builder, for the ESMS output. If those don't match, we stop and we take our research, we take it back to Matt and we say, hey Matt, I ran this work plan on my dev server because I'm still running Builder. I ran this on ESMS. We have some collisions. Then a decision is going to have to be made. Does he throw that back to his developers and go, hey, this should be this and it's not that? What happened? And then the guy goes, oh, I forgot the comma. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a developer, but that could be one of the reasons. Or if there's a bigger logic reason, then we go on hold. We're done. We're not moving any further. When you come back, continuous development, continuous improvement, when you come back with that solution, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to run it again. And as soon as we can see one building producing the same thing that it produced in Builder, we're going to do a bigger, more complex building. And then when you do a bigger, more complex building, we're going to go to a site. And then we're going to go from a site to what we call AORs, and we'll do an AOR. And once we can do all of that testing, retesting, verifying, get an AOR done, we'll push the button on the whole thing. Sorry, so
perfect,
that's the
thank you.
long-winded explanation, but Joe has a question.
Corporate Joe.
May I?
I didn't make that joke, he did. I'm
I know.
just, okay.
And I've been coined that. Anyway, Scott, you had indicated, and maybe I just missed it, so I apologize, but you were going to tell us why it was so important to make sure your data is as good as you can get it before you migrate. I was curious why you have that sense of urgency. I mean, we all want good data, I get all that, but why is it urgent prior to migration?
Because I think once we feed it into the ESMS hopper, if the ESMS adds a boiler that's 10 acres big, right? If we throw our stuff in ESMS and it comes out, we know we've verified in Builder it's right. If we get a boiler with a unit of measured quantity of acres, we didn't introduce that error. And we can go back to the Builder team or the ESMS team and say, hey, this is what happened. It was a 20,000 BTU boiler. It became a 20,000 acre boiler. You've got a code problem. It's not our data. Does that make sense, Joe?
I think so, but it's not, I mean, one aspect I've considered it is that if it's the same flaw, as long as the data remains the same, right or wrong, that's less of a concern to me than if, you know what I
I'll
mean?
let you borrow my manual, and you can make your data as good as mine, and then you'll understand my argument.
Okay, but I was just, I mean, I agree there's an impetus to doing that. I was just curious what you saw that made it so urgent in your mind.
I have some stuff, Joe, that I'm
All
going
right,
to give you some
sounds
examples.
good. Sounds
I'll
good.
give you a couple examples. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you.
Since it's, like he said, since it is support your local vendor thing, I'd like to recognize 3 people up here that are part of the SMS help desk. That they are the builder elves, as I call them, forever. There's a whole team that are behind them, but these 3 here, near and dear to my heart. You know that.
Stand up.
Come on.
I'm sorry. I didn't know we were going to love on Searle. That gentleman right there, when my guy sends him the 15th script to run in a day,
Yeah.
and then he tells him, oh, by the way, I need a backup on 1 October because I'm closing out year end. And oh, by the way, that's a Sunday.
And we got it.
And we got it,
Yeah.
and he goes in and does it. I mean, these guys are our unsung heroes. And don't you, Cheryl, you too.
Yeah.
You're the one to keep us running with access to the database. And the guy next to you, I don't know who he is, but you two, no, I'm just kidding. Oh, that's your vendor. That's right.
No,
All right.
that's Brody. Yeah. All right.
VIP. There you go.
So, Joe, I will start with your question because you asked it first. What's the urgency? The urgency was, and Matt, this is not a slap. The urgency was we were going to have this ATO in October, right? And so we started last year in going through and asking Searle, and Searle doing it on her own a bit too. We have, let me back up just. When I ran the program originally, I really kept a close hold on people that could do any damage in Boulder. I left for 5 years, came back, and I'm amazed at how many people have that ability now. And in doing that, we have thousands of facilities that have been created. Somebody's created a test for training some people they have. We have thousands of facilities that are in there that are garbage, absolute garbage. Just like Scott said, I want to make sure that we have good data and a good basis to be able to say, okay, I see a problem on this data and I don't think it's in Builder because I've cleaned up Builder. So how am I going to know? To answer the question about why do we want to be first, I like to road trip. I like to drive. I don't like sitting in the back seat. When I was a kid, we had the country squire, and you know where we sat, right? In the back, waving at the people behind us in the car, you know. I don't want to be that person. And if we can get out ahead and get out in front, which we always have been, except for this man here next to us, who kind of gave me that back almost 10 years ago, we can set some of the rules. And that, to me, is the epitome of why I want to drive. I want to get to that destination, and I'm the person that's going to drive, you know. I'll let you sleep on the side, but I'm going to drive. What have we done to prepare? Cleaning up the data, of course. All of our utility data, we did a couple contracts, And all of our underground utilities, we segmented them out, linear segmentation. And we got condition indexes on every single piece that we have except for one command, PACF. That's already been beta tested to be going into the system. We have 3 bases that we feel have good builder data, 3 bases, those same 3 bases that have very good GIS data, and those are the 3 bases that we've asked Matt to say, hey, we volunteer 3 guinea pigs to run hard, and can we do this? And so, again, if we can get in there first, then we're gonna go. The other part that we have done, and we did this in 2012 when I started, is we established an asset management division. We've got 60 people in there. I've got 12 that work for me in facilities. Another branch has got 12 that works for utilities. We've got Paver going in there. And we've been able to basically control our own destiny with this team. We set it up in the beginning to get energy audits, and they said, okay, you have to make or show that your value is greater than the $25 million that it's going to cost to run you for however many years. We accomplished that in the first year of our team by going through and doing audits. So we made our money. We've been pretty much on our own to be able to be independent. Dave, are you around? Salas? There he is. The other thing that we're doing right now is Dave is busting his butt, and probably doesn't like me even meddling with him, but I do it anyway, to make patch connections between ESMS and our CMMS. So between the Maximo engine, we have a 327 Chevy engine, which is Maximo, that we put on an Edelbrock header and then a Holley carburetor on the top of it for any of you car buffs that are out there. So we've built this machine out of the IBM product. It has some interesting pieces in it and things that do in it, and some things that don't exactly jive with Builder or ESMS. But with that man's fantastic dedication, we have been able to, and Dr. G, Mike's out there somewhere, been able to actually work very hard to get our connections together. The other thing, and Scott mentioned this too, leadership. My leadership from when I first started, I had so much freedom. And the reason they gave me freedom was basically go out and do this. Don't be afraid of failing. And they've told us from the beginning, don't be afraid to fail. And so as those leaders rotate out every 2 years, we've still got that credibility in what we're doing and what Matt is doing and what other folks around us are doing to where we get that. And that's tough because there are a lot of leave no general behind people out there that get picked up by other agents or other companies and want to talk about how this is a better system than that Builder system. But I will tell you what, we've run the numbers, we've looked at the data that we own, which is the key piece, and we're much better off owning our data, controlling our own data, than we are having to go through somebody like an IBD, I don't want to say their name, so anybody, to go through and get all that. And while we push a lot, I mean, all the way up to the 2-star, I personally have gotten his confidence that even though with all the delays or whatever we've got, what we have as a product right now is quality. We know what that quality is, and we can work that. Now, that said, we still have ghost bunnies under the bed, We're cleaning up the data. We have certain things cost book wise that we're trying to work on. A bunch of stuff that we work on, but we focus on smaller pieces. What is our data quality, like you just said? What is our data quality? What is our, how much completeness do we have? How is everything, because the 2013 memo, and I'll say it again, said every facility and every facility component. So how are we getting that completeness across the board? And then finally, we've already started doing what I hope will work as a training program. Because what's going to happen is ESMS, Matt's going to say, okay, you guys, here's your migration tool. go on, be fruitful and multiply. And I've got 3,000 people that are builder users that are going to go, what? You know, and so we need to make sure that those people are properly trained and comfortable to do what they need to do. And so that's what we've done. Over.
Okay, great. All right, I want to, oh, we got a question. Oh,
Yusuf.
please.
So, my name's Yusuf Abed.
Yes, you are.
I work for Lawrence Livermore National Labs. So, I want to kind of get back to how did we get ready? The original question. So, I'm an integrator. I'm a computer scientist, that kind of stuff. So, bear with me. Things I think about would be things like what is our minimal viable implementation in the new ESMS? In other words, what's the bare minimum we have to have? That would be a question I would ask, which I'm sure you guys are going to find out before me, because I don't have to worry about it because we'll be behind you. Thank you, Julie. The second thing I kind of looked at from the application side of the house, first of all, inspections. I would strip all my inspections out and only go with one, because that's the only one that cares. The last one wins. So I would become very light. Second, did I catalog everything? We have a massive catalog. I would look at my catalogs to make sure that my catalog mapping was correct. It's an interesting one. I'm really concerned about the section and the section detail, i.e., if you aren't flat, and when I say flat, you have one section to one detail, is your detail completely formed? Because you're going to have a good opportunity to populate that record. So I would think about things like that. The other thing I would think about is if, you know, Livermore, we chase deferred maintenance. That's all we chase. We're into that's the holy grail for us. So we keep everything out of the database, out of the builder database that will not generate DM. And so we've done a lot of evaluation and modeling on that. So I would get, again, less is better. So I would think about that. And then the final thing is, for us, it's going to be kind of, you know, I'm not going to say easy, but we're sitting on top of the Digon Spire API. And so we fully expect, and we've been promised, Chris, right, that we would be just able to swing our endpoint. So we have REST API endpoints. We would swing our endpoints and then push the button. And then if it goes like the regular endpoint, probably about 2.5 hours later, we would have a working, viable ESMS. So these are the things I think about, although I'm probably not going to spend a lot more time thinking about it, because 5 years is, I'll get to see all you guys think about it. So anyway, so that's my input into this workshop. Thank you for your
Great,
time.
thank you. Any comments on?
Thinking about all those things,
Yeah.
yeah. We've got an extensive document library and other things that we want to carry over to, that are attached to the asset record. So, yeah.
Good point.
Good
Very
points.
good points.
I
Yeah.
did want to bring up one more thing. Oh, one of the things we want to do that we are willing to take on, and I talked about that 18-month risk, and I'm going to make a lot of vendors really mad, and I'll start with my own. I'm not buying Carve again, okay? For the first time, we have the ability, because everything is in the Azure cloud, that if we buy a Surface tablet and Matt gets the mobile app working, I now have the ability to go collect data on a government-issued tablet to connect to a government-issued website. And with the developmental process of that, if we can make that work, we can all work in the same environment. Otherwise, I'm the victim, or not the victim, but I have to use apps to get my data to Builder and out of that. We rejected that a long time ago. We tried to make our CMS work with Builder. It wasn't going to work. We gave it up completely. But now that I have that ability, I can push data to whomever wants it. But my data collection, QC, QA, upload process is now in an environment that we own. So I told my bosses that's probably the #1 thing that's going to put us behind. I think we're gonna figure out how to get the data in the database. Guys, it's cell A to cell B, right? It's not rocket science. But that field collection piece, that's the long pole in the tent. The longer that doesn't work, the more my data goes behind because I can't go out to the field and collect it. And the bosses came back and said, that's okay. We want to be the tip of the spear. We're going to give Matt whatever he needs and his developers need to make that app work. But long term, that's our goal, to use Surface tablets and is there a name for that thing? Field app? What do we? ESMS mobile. And that is going to become the DHA standard for data collection. All right, so that's just one of the ways we're going to take risk. We're planning for it. The bosses have all bought into it, and Matt won't disappoint us. He'll make sure it works fine.
But you got to get a catchier name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, okay, there you go. Just part of our vision for where we're going. So.
Any other questions before we start doing a little more brainstorming and throwing things up on the wall? All right, we're going to switch over to a spreadsheet, Chris, and then Chris is going to assist with typing stuff in. So if we throw stuff out, we're going to put it up on the wall.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
This is our parking lot type thing.
Mhm.
So
A
post-it
bright
notes
idea
up on the
fairy.
wall. CPI event.
Butcher paper.
Butcher paper. Back in the day, baby.
The day. I bet that was more eco-friendly.
Awesome, that was quick. So unfortunately, the panel cannot see where I have, we've thrown in a couple of ideas already. So these are some of the things that we thought might be a good start, but if we can add to this list, that's my purpose here, is to try to figure out what, we've got some great minds in this room, so let's try to figure out some of the things that we need to do. So I've divided this up into two sides, mostly for you panel. We got pre-migration and post-pilot. So under pre-migration, one of the first things I thought was update the assessment guide. So I'm assuming most agencies already have an assessment guide. So do you have an assessment guide that you need to update? Show of hands. Okay. Okay, that's already in the works for ESMS?
Like Scott just pointed out, we don't know all the capabilities of ESMS. We think we do. We have a plan, but of course, once we get there, things are going to be better than we wanted, and some are going to be less than we wanted, and so it is part of the learning curve. But we don't know what those capabilities are. But for the generic skeleton of what we're doing of asset management, we're ready. You know, I've taken a lot of the screen captures that Matt's got and put them in and already started how to do the login, you know, all the basic stuff that we have to do.
We're
So-
not that far.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay.
They're working
I've got a couple other people working for me.
And then another one I put on there was create new contract or scope of work language. I hear a lot of agencies talking about this, but I don't know specifically what that means. Do you sense that there's going to be a big shift in what a scope of work needs to be written for to make it ESMS, or is it just change builder to ESMS? And I'm throwing that out to everybody, panel, audience.
Can you hear me?
You got you, Renelda.
Post-migration, can you put compare component cost or equipment cost or inventory cost?
Okay, say that again. So Chris is going to try to type this in. So this is under post-migration. You're jumping ahead of us, Ronald.
I'm sorry, it just was fastly. Compare component cost.
Oh, he still can't get that.
Compare component costs.
Compare component costs.
So if it costs $100 in Builder, it should cost $100 in ESMS if everything went right.
Yep. She's right.
Oh, and add unit of measure. Make sure the unit of measures match.
Compare unit of measure.
Yeah, that's a big one for us too, since we put all of our stuff into Builder. We're using lots of different units of measure.
Section status. Compare the section
compare
status,
section status. All right, coming up.
as well as the service life.
Compare service life.
Yeah, I think one thing for us that we're trying to do now is we're trying to get a better handle on our software deployments and the the accuracy and kind of V and Ving that, because we're trying to get really documented records now. And one of our groups, Cicado, is here, Tristan's in the back, so they're going to help us really document a lot of our testing procedures, because whenever we go through a software update, you know, we're not only testing to make sure that the user interface still interacts, but we need to be checking our calculations, because we found in the past that, you know, like we'll add a new feature or something, and all of a sudden the calculations that are coming out are not calculated correctly, right? And so one thing we're doing now in current Builder is make sure we have full set of testing procedures that we go through and thoroughly smoke test and go through all of the testing to make sure we do that, so that we don't lose not only the capability to do something, but that the calculations that are coming out are correct. And we need to do that before we migrate, so that when we migrate, we can run the same procedures and say, hey, I add a cost modifier, it actually calculates the correct cost on paper, and I don't just trust that the software is calculating it correctly, because we found issues where it hasn't been. So I think it's really vetting the system we have now and make sure we don't have any bugs that we are then carrying into. So it's not just the quality of the data going in, but is the software telling us what it should be today, so that when we compare it to the new, it works on both sides. So that's a big one for us.
For those of us who have distributed editing rights to our user base, right, I think we would need to have some period of data lockdown, both pre and post.
Yeah. There's got to be a time to stop. You're right, Joe.
Yep.
That's true.
Amen. Yep.
Yep. Little pace. That's a good point, Joe.
Yep.
Well, and I think I don't know what you have on there, but one thing is we really want to be hosting both of the systems simultaneously for some period before we sunset Builder. And in my mind, just initially 6 months comes out of we want to be hosting, doing everything in here and kind of running them side by side, so that we can see how the progress tracks and are things having a parity while they're up and running. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to be double populating everything. We want to highly leverage Spire, Diagon Spire API, so that, you know, as we update one system, we're updating the same at the same time, so we can see how it progresses over time and make sure that 6 months down the line, they're still saying the same thing, so that we have real confidence that when we finally retire one, we're sliding into the other appropriately. And for us, the big heavy lift is really going to come with Diagon and Gordian as our counterparts, because we have 5 different CMMS programs that we integrate with, and the cost engine leverages the Spire API too. So it's like, that's sort of our Rosetta Stone of being able, that middleware that allows us to integrate with all of these systems. So as long as Spire maintains the integrity of those Builder endpoints through the API, then the lift is really not on us, it's on Diagon and Searle to make sure, which I hate saying, it's all your, you know, Chris, you guys get to do it all, but
I get to point to Chris.
and that was one of the things that we chose to do early on, is because again, if it's all just managed by this middleware that can really translate to any system, then we only have to change it therein, and we don't have to change any of our existing systems to match the new system. We just have to have the translation happen appropriately. So we want to be testing that, and our Livermore team is really good about, you know, they can delete every single record in Builder today and dump it right back into the system the next day and check that everything's going in. So that's kind of how we anticipate doing a lot of what we're doing. But like I said, I want to make sure we're doing it simultaneously, not for a day, not for a week, probably months, to make sure that they're still acting appropriately before, because once you turn it off, we're going to turn it off, right? And we don't want to all of a sudden lose confidence when we switch over. So I don't know what that time frame really looks like or what that is, but something that we're trying to think about.
How about the rest of the panel about once you've made the 100% migration, would you run both systems in parallel for
a little while? At least, like I said, we want to do a couple test bases and run those, and then.
But after that, I mean,
Yeah.
of course you're going to keep it going when the
No, after that, no.
the pilots are going.
No, we'd jump off that
It'll
cliff
be-
afterwards.
Yeah,
We'd jump
exactly. We're going to sink or swim.
And I'm not sure. So,
We wouldn't try to run two.
No,
So-
and I would add too, and I know it's the elephant in the room or the gorilla in the room, cost book. You know, we've got to update the cost book. Kurt brought it up the first day about 2011, and we're just doing incremental updates and stuff. But we all rely on that cost book, and there are some ghosts that are in there There were some baby monkeys, there were some drunk monkeys, there were some sleepy monkeys. There's a whole bunch of monkeys in that barrel that we need to clean up.
Matt, can I put you on the spot? Is there any thought about when this happens to go to ESMS that it would be a new cost update enterprise-wide? He's gonna kill me later for doing this.
Yeah, you can put me on the spot. I don't know if I'll have a great answer. There's an ongoing work with the DoD group and the cost licensing contract we have there, trying to work through some of these details. I know there have been a lot of changes since the post-COVID era and inflation going through the roof.
Big one.
And some of that came back, messing up numbers pretty significantly. And some of them were legitimately bad, then others, no, it really did get that much more expensive, and this is our new reality.
Yeah.
So we're working through a bunch of those. I think hopefully we have some stuff to leverage, working with NNSA and their more extensive catalog across all these different domain types. So looking to already kind of evaluating some of that for potential into the future. So.
Hey, while you're at the mic, didn't you say in August that once we transitioned over, we don't come back and you're not going to maintain two sets?
Yeah, so for the NNSA example, working with an integrator, and we'll just keep it nameless and generic, for the sake of it in case there are others out there, but working with an integrator that has an API-based system where you could push your updates to both, that system could work. In a singular operating system, like essentially most of the others I'm aware of, you are a swivel chair entering in both, introducing opportunity for error,
Yeah.
and that's
No, we don't want
probably
that.
not going to be a helpful comparison. But if you
We
have
don't
the same route you're branching off into to both systems,
Right.
that's a feasible, workable thing. So.
Thank you, Matt.
Spot. Thanks.
So
So
I'd
Chris,
like
I
to
don't see
cor-
cost book on that list yet, man.
I'd like,
I think probably pre-migration, yeah.
correct Julie.
Oh, come on, Yusuf.
She's got a gang behind her, Yusuf. Hang on, brother.
Given the topology, given the architecture, we could run both Builder and the new ESMS simultaneously without indefinitely. So, and it's only 4 hours to recover the entire instance.
There you go, 4 hours.
Right, on this side.
Yeah, mine, I guess, would be under post-bid migration.
Hang on.
Is that if you're using any APIs?
Hang on. You can't hear?
I can't hear you.
Okay, it should be working now?
Yeah.
That's better.
So mine was for post-migration.
Can you get
John,
like
get
right close
closer.
to the mic?
This close? Okay.
There we go.
I'm now a rock singer.
It's like karaoke. Karaoke, John.
Yeah. So for post-migration, if you're using anything with like an API or other export of the data coming out of Builder that you're using in other tools like dashboards, you're going to need to validate that the data you had coming over is still the same so that your dashboards and stuff would work.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we said. That was what we were saying in the beginning. That's true, John.
On this side.
Yeah, you guys may have already covered this, but when you talk about the cost book data and making updates, I would not try to do it in parallel with our efforts here to transition to ESMS.
That's why I said
Yeah.
pre-med. That's what I was
If
telling
it's-
Chris.
And if it's
Pre.
pre, it needs
Yeah.
to be pre and
Yeah.
be done, look at the data and
Yeah.
then migrate, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're gonna be mixing everything together in the wash.
That's a good point. And we can do some testing of how good the cost book is with the Builder data that we've already have and some of the work items that we've already generated. That's our plan. That's a perfect point. Perfect point. That's why she's AFCEC. IMS, oh, that's my boss then, so sorry.
Seeing John up there did make me think. I didn't see functionality assessment scoring
That's a
testing.
good one too, John.
That's a
That's
good
what I
one.
thought you were gonna
Yep.
bring up.
So a lot of people think BCI before and after, but
The
an
other
FI
FCI.
score before
Yeah.
and after
Yeah.
using a DECA
Yep.
assessment would be a great thing to
Yeah.
include.
So that would go on the post mitigation or some development, hopefully we. Functionality index, but the module's been turned off for the most part in Builder right now. That's what I thought you were coming up to talk about, John. Richard, sorry, Paul, you're the moderator. Richard,
Richard's first.
To the cost book discussion and questions. There's a tri-service meeting this month
Yep.
to review for DOD the cost book I don't have the date, but it's like the 10th or something, I think. And if you are an active member between the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy, you need to be on that call to the very points that have been being brought up. Because we're talking about the current iteration of the unit price book, and then I'm gonna bring up the next iteration of the contract with Gordian and the things that need to be done to help clean up some of that data.
Yeah, it's nice. That's good, Richard.
So.
That's
if,
good.
Anybody's interested, go through your service representative or go through AMC for the Army, or the National Guard, or the Reserve, and of course the Air Force, and then John for the Navy. So, I mean, that's going on right now.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, Mr. Frank.
Dr. Mondo.
I think I just wanted to bring up the point with it. The first item on the pre-migration list is to update the assessment guide. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight about all the good work that has been done to get us to where we are today, and not forget about, we need guidance on how to sustain the system going forward. The transition into ESMS shouldn't be a restart, if you will. We've got to take it as a launching point to the next generation, if you will. But the next generation has to include some type of sustainment guidance for the data. I think Tyler's explanation or example of what they're doing at USDA is great. You know, they're actually looking at ways to sustain the data. You know, do we really need to reassess everything in every 5 years? I know the Army is going through that exercise right now internally as well. So perhaps there's a community of effort that can be pre-migration to be thinking about not just the baseline assessments in ESMS and how to do new inventory, but how do we sustain the existing data going forward? What are the value of reassessments or not?
That's a
I
good
like that.
point, brother. Very good point.
So Chris, on that first one, let's say update assessment guide, including sustainment effort.
Yeah, I would even argue, Frank, that the assessments probably aren't going to be much different in the ESMS, right? So in actuality, I was going to say to Chris, wax out the word update assessment guide and just put in there update the sustainment guide. Because you've got a good point, brother. We all know how to say red, green, or amber, you know? That's not what we need. And nothing's going to change on that on what we've got. So it really is a sustainment guide, yeah.
Hi, Stephanie Greco with Livermore. I wanted to kind of follow on the functionality scoring piece. My understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that none of the DoD installations of Builder are utilizing the functionality module within Builder. Is that correct?
For the Air Force, we've turned it off for right now, yes. It was causing far too many problems. It wasn't really linking what it was supposed to be doing. We had some good checklists in there. We copied over from whatever it was supposed to be, that functionality piece. ADA, fire, a whole different things. But it wasn't doing what we thought it would get. You know, it wasn't getting us what we needed to. And so we just stopped and we said, we're going to deal with it in the ESMS. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So hearing that kind of leads into my next point is, I know in the NNSA integration, we had struggles with the module itself, building everything in the back end, and also retrieving the data through reports. And so I would say pre-migration, it may be a good idea to investigate that and make sure that you have that lined up as best as you can before you move over.
And I will add, we've been working with Dr. Grusing. A lot of, and Matt's kind of tied up over there, so he's not here for right now, but a lot of what we're going to be able to do in the ESMS is exactly customizations from the user's end, right? And that's the goal, right? And so creating new functionality worksheets rather than, you know, the ones that are in there, the canned ones that are in there for things that we have. That is pretty high up on our list as well. That's a good point, man.
For Chris's effort of typing this in, how should we, you got a summary of that?
Maybe review BFI process and data retrieval.
Did you get that, Chris?
It's kind of broad.
Yeah, it's like the capability itself.
Capability, yeah.
Yeah.
Review functionality capability?
Yeah, review functionality capability is probably it. You know.
Yeah, not only building it in the back end, because we did have a customized functionality assessment going on there, but not only building it, but retrieving the information.
Yeah, we don't
So
want
both pieces.
Well, and that's one reason also I think that is advantageous for us to wait a little bit on it is we can never get the functionality module working in our environment. And so we basically, like, I looked to Livermore and I said, hey guys, we don't have anything to work. What do you got? And within like a week, they already had a conceptual design, you know, laid out for building a tool outside of Builder. And we've been using that this last year. So I think, you know, seeing what the ESMS capability is going to be, we can kind of mimic our tool and keep going outside of it. And then hopefully working with the developers, once it's at a mature state, we can even inform like, hey, this is what we're doing. Can we build features in so that we can just port it over and start managing there? If we do, you know, or we'll just manage it separately on there. But we do need to make sure we have, like I said, the testing procedures to make sure that whatever the ESMS does, if we maintain this tool outside, that there is full parity in what we're doing so that we're not going, you know, completely separate and apart from other Builder community users or ESMS users, I guess, at that point.
Our assumption is, so we got tired of waiting for them to fix the FI module. We didn't like anything that was in the FI module. It was all old. So no matter which way you sliced it, we went outside, as Julie did. We created our own. They're Excel spreadsheets with questions that are weighted that then give us the answers to the questions. And we've worked with Searle to download those scores, top load those scores in the FI module, and then affect the BPI by a weighted average. So from that perspective, our assumption going in, unless Matt is just going to totally impress me right now, is that we will not carry FI over. Because if they fix FI going into ESMS, the way that we top load scores today will break FI in ESMS. So I think we're both in a position where there ain't no FI currently if we're doing it outside and top loading that will transition into the FI and the ESMS because, right, Matt, it's going to be a true AHP-based FI scoring system that we're going to be able to do whatever we want with, like vanilla ice cream. Oh, come on. Just give me an amen, brother. Yes, that's what we're doing.
I don't know if I can live up to all those promises, but the structure is the same in ESMS, as I mentioned, was it yesterday? I don't know, lost track of days. But the structure for how we capture those assessments is modeled off of the Builder structure for functionality assessments. And despite the UI challenges and stuff we've had, the data structure is extremely flexible, powerful to design them in a number of different ways, calculate them in any number of different ways. So anticipate a lot of flexibility in how we define those different assessment types, whether they're condition, functionality, some new thing we dream up that we want to capture and collect data on in ESMS. So.
Yeah.
Amen.
So I mean, if you want to put something in there post-migration, it's going to be take your Excel spreadsheets and put them into the FI module. Right? So everything that we're doing outside of Builder today, we're going to have to transition into ESMS and rebuild it.
Well,
That's what I heard him
it
say.
may be worth it post also is maybe just have like a ESMS user community for those that are using functionality outside. Maybe we can come together and share what we're doing so that we can inform future development of that module so it is customized enough that we could all put our stuff and manage it there should we want to.
Yep.
So it would be in a post-migration or post-pilot import outside functionality data? Is that?
The way I look at it is if the FI module is a true AHP, analytical hierarchical process, then I can go in and put questions and I can go in and weight them and I can go in and put questions above those questions, weight them, and then I can take all my questions and weight them to kick out a score. Because that's how it works to get to BPI. And so assuming that that is built out the way Matt just described, that data doesn't exist in Builder to go into that.
Right.
So we don't anticipate, again, our top-loaded scores being in the new Builder, in the new SMS. We're going to have to go into ESMS and build those questions, build those scores, build that whole process into ESMS as one of our steps to transition.
Okay.
Because that's not what we really have there. It says, it's a...
Review FI score.
Yeah, it's really not reviewing FI scores, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah, now you
What-
just
what
typed
you
it
got
out.
added.
We're
typed it in,
seeing what
okay.
you have about 5 seconds late,
after
man, and
you are.
delayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
At least we're
different- it's
seeing it
different than
now.
what-
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Okay.
And John, you did a similar thing at DECA with functionality.
Yeah, none of the functionality checklists out there
Applied.
applied
Yeah.
to what we work
Yeah.
with at a supermarket.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice supermarket.
You young man.
Thank you.
Somebody was online asking about how do they create consistency with all the changeover. So I don't know if it's necessarily just a migration problem, but I think user onboarding.
Oh, that's-
Continuity books is
we
what
haven't
we
got to
call
that
it.
one.
Yeah, yeah, we have continuity books that I established in 2012 that people are still using and updating, and we've got historical documents that were in there and why do we make changes. But having continuity books is a way for us that we address that, deal with that. Because you're absolutely right. We've got rotating leaders every 2 years. You know, there's only a few GS most of the time that are still sticking around. And for us at AFCEC, we like to try to say that we're a incubator, and we bring in a lot of GS13s that go off to be 15s and stuff in other places, you know, so that we don't have people that stay for more than, you know, a few. I didn't stay and then I came back, you know, I mean, it's just, that's the way we work. So that's a good point, Kurt.
Kurt, would that be something to add to the list?
As Pete said, onboarding with the, what was your tool?
We use a continuity book, we call them.
Continuity.
Continuity books and onboarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Hi, Yusuf again. I want
I'd
to get
say
back.
post, Chris. Yeah, I'd say post. I guess maybe by having them already, if folks don't already have them. But we have already some built up, but we're not going. We don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, right? We're in the sandbox and we built them off of the sandbox. Is the real thing going to perform like the sandbox? You know. So, but having continuity books is the only way that we can get over that piece that Kurt's bringing up. You know, the lack of continuity.
I want to circle back around to functionality very quickly. So Julie alluded to the application that we built at Livermore. The application is called FX Calculator. What it does, it does produce the FI score for Builder, but in addition to that, what it does is it monetizes it and then produces costs out of it. So for modernization, so it's more than just a.
Yeah, we love that.
If you can monetize that, that's one. I'm sorry.
So we use several things. We use the Builder data to monetize it, but we also use the cost engine data to monetize it. The reason we did that was because this index comes out and it's like, okay, so
now what?
Now what, right?
Yeah.
And so what you really want to know is, you know, how if I want to buy 3 points of functionality, what's that going to cost me?
Yeah.
And the calculator will do that automatically.
So do you tie that? Sorry. Do you tie that to the equipment that's being?
Yes.
So that's
We
you know
do-
enough.
Yeah, we're in a little different situation because we have the cost model or the cost engine.
Yeah.
But it takes the difference. So we put our inventory in and we put our and we use the cost model output as well.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually plummet to the cost engine, and we're using that.
We constantly
Anyways.
get that question with our functionality questions. Good, I just told you that my air exchanges aren't high enough for this zone, so I need a new widget to be able to produce those.
What's your investment going to be? That's
Yeah.
that's the
What's your
question.
investment going
What's
to be?
that
Yeah,
impact
what's your
on that?
But
investment
we
gonna
never
be?
tied that back,
Yeah,
right? And that's
you want to drive
yeah.
it to money because people understand money, right? They don't
Right.
understand 0 to 100, I guess. You know, we did that in school when we got grades, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, it does. It bases off of the Builder inventory on there, so it's not really gonna. It doesn't have enough intelligence to really say like, oh, what would a really modernized system be? You can't know what it is,
No.
but it'll at least give you the baseline of, well, this system has issues and this has to be addressed. So it gives you a starting place because we don't want to waste all of our time trying to come up with cost estimates for modernizations that we'll never take action on. It's like you just wasted all your time. So
Good point.
And a shout out to Julie because she asked the question.
I said, we can't do this. Yusuf, what can we do? So I looked at my computer scientist. That's who I run to. So.
I was going to bring up something we hasn't talked about, but when we kicked off Builder, I'm talking about Defense Health before it was Defense Health, back in 2014, we had a very robust training program, hat tip to Guigon. Kurt's the one that was our consultant and did a huge amount of training. We kind of quit training people in Builder because the permissions were all jacked up, right? You know, it was like, we can give you permission and you can destroy the building, and sometimes you can destroy the site. And we'd go to Cyril and go, well, how old can you, you know, and back in the day, it was like, well, we only back it up once a week. So if a guy goes in, he right-clicks, deletes, building's gone, we got to roll back the whole database. The risk was so high. 99.9% of the people in my database have read-only. And if they want a product from it, we'll build them the product, right? So having said that, with the new permissions, and if you want to put this is the this is probably post-migration, but it's reestablishing the permissions, reestablishing the users, reestablishing the roles.
Revisit, maybe?
Revisit.
Yeah.
We are tying that directly to training. And so one thing we're working on pre-migration is to set up the roles and all the different roles that anyone in DHA may want, depending on what their job is. And then we're going to our vendor and saying, now you develop training. So if the guy only ever wants to look at reports, regardless of who he works for, we're going to create a training for reports, and we're going to roll him out, ROL he, not ROLL, but as only that, right? And then we'll go all the way down to the young person we have. Well, they're not all young, but most of them are, going out and collecting data, right? And we'll have a role and a training set up for him. So we're putting a lot of money, a lot of time in the next, really it needs to be done before the 18-month, in the next year to get into the permissions module #1, figure out the training, develop the training, and then we're going to go worldwide training again, just like we did 10 years ago.
Exactly.
So, because that's all the benefits of ESMS is really cool, and we're projecting that, but if the users can't see it, and the commanders can't see it, and the commanders' staffs can't see it, then we're just another voice in the wind going blah, 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 right? So that's a technical term, blah, blah, blah. So.
You have to do the hand sign at the same time.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
All right, we got like a couple of minutes left, last chance.
We're the last ones. We can stay here till 8 o'clock.
No.
Sure. Sure. You might be by yourself.
Okay, that's
Some
so
people react
ambitious.
too
I don't know,
quickly
Bill.
than others.
That was a joke. That was a joke. Yeah, that joke lights on.
All right, that's awesome. Let's give a, what's that? Oh, that's right, because Kurt's going to come up and close us out. Give us thanks to the panel up here and all of you for contributing to some ideas. This is a really great list, and we will expand on it as time goes on, and it's a great start. Thank you so much.